Hello, everybody. Welcome. So today, we are really excited that you're here watching, and we hope this means that our talk today can be accessible for everyone. And we hope many of you can also join us live for a conversation on Tuesday, March 29th. And it would be great if lots of you can be there. So today we wanted to revisit the semantics of perimenopause and menopause and talk about where people are in the various stages. So we'll go over both perimenopause and menopause, and then we can spend a few moments on how to reframe how we perceive this period, because the reframing can make a surprising and important difference. So let's go ahead and just get started with that. Eliza.
Thank you, Christy. This is fun to be here. So when we tell people we've written a program on perimenopause and menopause, people usually think we mean to begin like a super depressing conversation about horrible symptoms and hormone replacement therapy. People in this country usually think of menopause as a syndrome, maybe at best, more like a debilitating chronic disease, your body letting you down, the beginning of the end, the end of femininity, the end of beauty, the end of youth, the end even of sexuality. Part of what we're trying to convey here is that none of these attitudes is helpful, healing, or even based in the science and fact.
Yeah, so in fact, we hope you're learning in the program that perimenopause is a natural transition to really a new version of ourselves. So we like to see it as an opportunity for change, freedom, and even self-reflection. One of our favorite authors named Susan Mattern, who wrote the book, The Slow Moon Climbs, calls this phase vigorous and expansive, which we love. This is a time for being unapologetically yourselves, for living your best life, and for not worrying about others' perception of us, maybe for the first time in our lives. So since I am in perimenopause, I will define that stage and briefly cover what you might be experiencing here. So perimenopause is the transition from the reproductive years into menopause. So during perimenopause, your hormones slowly start to change. First progesterone and then estrogen. This change takes years and begins years before ovulation and menstruation eventually stop. The production of both these hormones gradually declines and results in irregular and changing menstrual cycles. And often, the more gradual the change, the fewer the symptoms that you might have. So the common challenges you may be facing in perimenopause are the duration, frequency, and heaviness of your cycle may change. 85% of us will experience hot flashes. Many of us experience vaginal dryness and painful sex. Almost half of us get night sweats and lose sleep. 30% of us experience depression and anxiety. And then it's super common to experience weight gain, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and brain fog. So as you hopefully read, most of these concerns are transient, and there is lots we can do to help them, which we'll continue to share, throughout the 3 months of this course. So rest assured, we'll also focus on the ongoing challenges as well. In fact, we will be talking about some of the ramifications of hot flashes in our next Zoom a week from Tuesday.
Okay, so reaching menopause, as I did a year ago in the middle of this pandemic, what does that mean? So on the very day that we are exactly 1 year past our last period, we are officially at menopause. Technically, however, the end of our last period is the beginning of menopause, right? That's when the period ends, but we don't know that until the year has passed. So most often people talk about that year that day after the 1 year, then you're at menopause. If we get our period again during that year, then the year clock starts over again. So many people, myself included, use the term menopausal to describe the stage after menopause. And then also it's also common to say post-menopausal after you've hit that day. In menopause, progesterone is produced at a much lower level, which makes sense because progesterone is the hormone that is responsible for thickening the lining of the uterus to prepare it for pregnancy. So that's much lower. And then estrogen is also lower, but it's still about 2/3 of the formal level. Interestingly, about a third of us experience higher estrogen production for about 5.5 years before menopause. And that then causes symptoms of estrogen dominance. It's sort of a little bit more serious symptomology. And so it's because the amount of estrogen relative to the amount of progesterone it's more different, and there's more variation, and it causes more distress. So our ovaries, where we used to produce all our estrogen, are still producing some, and this is called estradiol. But now to a greater extent, it's our adrenal glands that are responsible for producing a gentler estrogen called estrone. So our adrenals are also responsible for how we handle stress. The more stress we're under, and the more our adrenals are being pushed to produce stress-related hormones, the harder it is for them to then also produce progesterone in particular. And progesterone has this really soothing and calming effect on us. So again, many of the most difficult symptoms that have to do with hormone fluctuations and stress, bringing those hormone fluctuations. In other words, so the more stress we're under, the worse the challenges of perimenopause and menopause, because we're making stress hormones and not progesterone. So again, most of the challenges that Christy mentioned are not forever. For most people, the brain fog, thank God, is temporary. It is not a harbinger of dementia or Alzheimer's. So we feel we can even embrace the peri-brain a little bit. Christy and I have made a joke or two along those lines sometimes, like maybe we might have forgotten something at some point. But even in terms of the challenges of depression and mood, which, as she mentioned, is 30% of us that are really experiencing a lot of depression and anxiety. Studies show, and I find this fascinating, that the negative perception of menopause is more closely correlated to depression, to the experience of depression, than your actual hormone status is correlated to depression. So this is the perception more closely correlated to depression than your like menopausal or hormonal status is correlated to depression. So that brings us to the idea that belief and expectation exert a powerful effect on the experience of menopause. Women throughout history and across cultures experience menopause differently, even in terms of actual physiological challenges. As you read, I hope, there was a study in the 1980s of rural Mayan women from the Yucatan, and pregnancy and childbearing years were a source of a lot of anxiety and stress. And it was in fact midlife that brought, in their culture, a respected elder status for women. And so these women in their midlife reported fewer hot flashes than women in the US typically reported. There are also several studies just in the US that have shown that women who experience greater freedom after menopause also report fewer symptoms. So just more on the meaning of menopause, evolutionarily, why was it adaptive and beneficial for our bodies to stop the ability to bear children with so many decades ahead of us? women can no longer bear children after midlife for good reason. The value of women's contributions once past childbearing age was critical to the success of our species, it seems. The early research on the foraging Hadza in Tanzania, there are not many foraging cultures anymore, but this is from a number of decades ago, this study. And it showed that the contributions of menopausal women were central not only to the survival of like their own family and their own kin, but to the health of the entire community. Menopausal women were the most industrious members of the group. And also they were the repositories of knowledge. They knew the land, the harvest, the seasons, the water, the movement of the animals. And interestingly, as these women became older women and not quite as able physically, it was still worth it to the group to forage for them and give to them because their contributions in terms of knowledge were so great. They were not a sentiment, but a requirement. So for fun, we also looked at menopause in the animal world. This, I find it fascinating too. Orcas and pilot whales are the only other mammals that we know for sure experience menopause. So it's humans and orcas and pilot whales. Orca females reproduce between the ages of 12 and 40. Then they live to around 90, 50 years with no babies, but obviously making a contribution. So it turns out that especially in times of scarcity, the post-reproductive females, the females in menopause, provide leadership in terms of the location of food sources and also herding fish. They are the most likely members of the pack to lead the salmon hunts. And studies show that the pods with menopausal matriarchs, those ones with menopausal matriarchs leading them, are most successful in terms of survival. And just as a slightly rude aside, while the female orcas live to 90, male orcas only live to about 50 and somehow are not seen as, or somehow don't make the same kind of contributions as the rock star midlife and older lady orcas.
So clearly we see the value in reframing how we view the state of menopause. And as you heard from Eliza, accepting our respected elder status may actually reduce the challenges we are facing in perimenopause and early menopause. So apparently, if we can grow to see this period as, you know, critical to the survival of our species and being industrious and invaluable, as Eliza said, our hot flashes might disappear, which sounds pretty good to us. So let's think for a moment about how to reframe this state of being in order to help feel our best. So number one, we still have a reliable body. Just because our ovaries are no longer releasing eggs, that does not mean anything is falling apart. Our bodies are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing at this moment. Number two, can we start thinking of our mood swings as desire for more time alone? Can we start thinking of hot flashes as kind of a well-being wake-up call, maybe? One of our favorite authors, Leslie Kenton, says, quote, "Hot flashes and night sweats demand that we pay attention to our bodies and our lives, exactly what menopausal women are supposed to do." So we will learn later why hot flashes are indicators of other issues and why, if you're getting them, we actually want to work towards reducing and eliminating them. You'll be learning about that really soon. Number three, even though our culture tends to idolize younger women do, in fact, have a history and culture of seeing the beauty in wiser, more confident, self-assured older women. So these pioneers that have come before us, who are so often our idols and younger women's idols, these women are most likely postmenopausal. So in our reframing, we can see that they have arrived and that they are sexy, strong, creative, and really released from the expectations and perceptions that may have even held them back when they themselves were younger. So reflect these positive attitudes back onto yourself now that you are in midlife. Finally, number 4, stay positive. There are tons of things we can do that we cover in Be the Change that can support our new selves and to fill ourselves up with renewed energy. So you will continue learning about all of these as we continue the program. And we hope you'll spend some time really thinking about the reframing and how it can benefit you in your life. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we look forward to connecting with you again really soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.